thank you for tuning in to the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, hosted by me, Jeff Tito Thidoff. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast fix. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter. I am at THITHappens. That's at THIT Happens. At THITHappens. Give me a follow if you have any specific questions. That's probably the best way to reach me. We are inching even closer to the NFL draft at the end of this month. And another move was made just recently as far as the quarterbacks go. More dominoes fall as the busy offseason in the NFL continues. Sam Darnold, quarterback of the New York Jets, got moved to the Carolina Panthers. That, of course, falls in line with the thinking the Jets will take a quarterback at number 2 overall in the draft, likely BYU's Zach Wilson. And the Panthers have given Teddy Bridgewater, last year's starter, the opportunity to look for work elsewhere, try to work out a trade, or he may end up coming back and being the backup to Darnold. Now, the Jets did Darnold a huge favor. After all the dysfunction that they caused to Darnold's life since they drafted him in 2018 with the 3rd overall pick, ahead of Josh Allen, ahead of Lamar Jackson, also ahead of Josh Rosen, but that's a different story. But, you know, Darnold came in with these high expectations. He's 6'3", he's 225, great size for a quarterback, and was highly rated coming out of USC. He only went 13-25 for the Jets, 45 touchdown passes, and 39 interceptions. And I'm here to tell you, it wasn't his fault. I'm not sure if he'll be great in Carolina or not, but I know that we were going to find out exactly how good he could have been if he would have had stable coaching, reliable coaching, and good weapons around him in Carolina. Now, when Darnold got drafted by the Jets, Todd Bowles was the head coach. Not a very good head coach. And then Adam Gase the last 2 years. His offensive coordinator, or QB coach both, in 2018 was Jeremy Bates. He was fired less than a year after getting that OC job. So they bring in another guy, another offensive coordinator, QB coach in 2019, Dole Loggins. And by the way, he was the quarterback coach for the Browns and reportedly was one of the people in favor of drafting Johnny Manziel. So those are the guys that Sam Darnold worked with in his 3 years with the Jets. Not exactly high-level coaching, nothing like he's going to get when he goes to work with Matt Rule in Carolina, which is a huge upgrade. And we'll really get a chance to see what Darnold can do when he's got good, reliable, and consistent coaching, I would hope. The Jets were such a dumpster fire, a turnstile with coaches and coordinators, and look at the weapons. Take a look at the weapons Darnold had when he was at the Jets. And weapons, by the way, is a word I'm using very loosely when I say this. But in 2018, the leading receiver was Robbie Anderson with 50 receptions. 50 receptions was the leader in 2018. The lead running back, Isaiah Crowell, 685 yards rushing. 2019, he had Jamison Crowder, who caught 78 passes. Le'Veon Bell, coming out of the backfield, caught 66. Robbie Anderson caught 52. And Le'Veon Bell had 789 yards rushing. 2020, Jamison Crowder led the way with 59 receptions. Frank Gore, 653 rushing yards. He never had an elite receiver in New York, never had an elite running back, never even a top 10 receiver or top 15 receiver, maybe even top 20 receiver. Nothing like that in New York ever for him. Now, he goes to Carolina. He's got the best offensive coach, the best coaching staff, the best wide receiver group, the best running back Darnold's ever had since coming to the NFL. You've got DJ Moore. In 2019, he was injured last year for a while, so I'm not going to count that. But in 2019, though, when you had a banged-up Cam Newton thrown to him, he had 87 receptions for 1,175 yards. Robbie Anderson last year, the same Robbie Anderson was in New York. And you can see what kind of a jump a guy like Robbie Anderson can make when he goes to an elite offensive system. Robbie Anderson last year had 95 catches for 1,096 yards. The same Robbie Anderson I just dogged from the Jets for having reception totals of 50 and 52 had 95 last year. You've got Moore and Anderson right there for Darnold to throw to. Running back, we know McCaffrey got hurt last year early in the season, missed 12 games, I believe was a total. But when McCaffrey was healthy, back in 2019, he had 1,387 rushing yards, caught 116 passes, and scored 19 touchdowns. This is rarefied air now for Sam Darnold. He gets a chance to have good coaching and great weapons around him. I'm not going to tell you Darnold's going to be great. I don't know if he will be or not. We'll see. We'll learn more, obviously, in the preseason and as we get closer to the start of the season. But he's got a tremendous opportunity to have a bounce-back year. If you're in a dynasty league, I would go ahead and buy low on him now. I don't think Sam Darnold's going to be... I think he's already had his worst years as a pro, by far. I think he will be much better. I don't know how much better, but much better in Carolina than what you've seen in New York. I think he's got too much going for him to regress back to what he had in New York. And you see quarterbacks come into the league all the time, and based on they may have great talent, tremendous talent in college, and check all the boxes, but the situation they get into in the NFL forces them into a life of failure. Look at David Carr. David Carr was a fantastic quarterback in college, gets drafted by the Texans, they have no offensive line, and he gets sacked so many times, he's never the same quarterback again after that. Awful situation for him. And that's what happens to some of these guys. We get bad coaching. You get a situation where there's too much turmoil, too much overturn, and you don't have a chance to succeed, and before you know it, you're out of the league or you're labeled a backup forever. So this is Darnold's opportunity. If I'm in a dynasty league, I am buying low on Sam Darnold right now, trying to get him because I think you're not going to get anything worse than what you've seen lately from him, and I think it's only going to be much, much better. So as we're judging these quarterbacks that get drafted this year, we got to see what kind of system they go into, who the head coach is, how stable the coaching staff is, what kind of weapons are around them, and then we see exactly which ones are the most valuable. Speaking of rookies, if you're in a dynasty league, you obviously pay very close attention to where these rookies end up at other positions as well. And I'll tell you, in a PPR league, I'm in love with Najee Harris for Alabama. Depending on the situation, if he goes to a team like the Steelers, for instance, who I'm hoping he goes there, he can become the lead back from day one. He catches passes out of the backfield, and I think he could be a stud from day one in the NFL if he goes to the right situation. Another guy like Jamar Chase, the wide receiver at LSU, match him up with the Bengals with Joe Burrow, his former quarterback, and that would be huge for Cincinnati. I know that the Bengals talk about wanting to improve their offensive line, but one of the best ways to improve Joe Burrow's ability to get rid of the football is have a burner out there who is very reliable and catch passes that Burrow knows. If Jamar Chase goes to Cincinnati, for instance, that'd be a great get for them. I think that's the best spot for him to go to early in the draft as far as having success immediately. Kyle Pitts, the tight end for Florida. Everyone's talking him up quite a bit, and he was great last year. He's more of a wide receiver than a tight end. He's fantastic. He's very confident in his abilities. It's always hard to gauge tight ends, though, when they come into the league. And it seems like most of the time, tight ends that come in with all the hype, it takes them some time before they finally get going, and sometimes they never get going. Remember how good Jeremy Shockey was supposed to be when he came into the NFL? Kellen Winslow II, the soldier, how good he was supposed to be. And, it's hard when you see these guys that come through that after playing in Florida in the SEC with the much faster-paced offenses, mismatches all the time. I don't know if Pitts will have the same success or close to the same success he had at Florida. He is clearly the top tight end on the board coming into the draft this year, but I don't know. I think he might be getting overhyped just slightly. Now, if you are in a dynasty league and have a spot for a tight end, by all means, he's a great person to get, great grab in a dynasty league. But I think the hype train needs to slow down just a little bit when it comes to Kyle Pitts. Devonta Smith, the wide receiver out of Alabama. I love him as well. I think he'll make a great impact whatever team he goes to. Travis Etienne, the running back for Clemson. I'm more concerned about where he goes, what kind of system he's in. I know I've seen projections have him going to Tampa Bay with the last pick of the first round. I don't know if that will happen now that they've re-signed Fournette, but he is somebody who could benefit greatly from someone like the Bruce Arians system. And I know Kansas City wouldn't take him because they got Edwards-Helaire already, but he is somebody who could go into a situation like that and flourish right away. So if he gets the right coaching staff, Etienne could be very good as well. But Harris, for me, is the number one running back and probably the number one PPR guy coming into the league this year as far as dynasty goes. I cannot wait to talk more about the NFL draft once these players get drafted, where they're going, and we can start evaluating what their value is and dynasty rankings going forward. We're going to take a quick break, but support for the Premier Fantasy Podcast is brought to you by MANSCAPED, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide, including me. Join the movement for all your below-the-waist grooming needs, and whoever is in your life with you right now will thank you for it. So go to manscaped.com, and if you enter promo code TITO, T-I-T-O, promo code TITO, get you 20% off your first order and absolutely free shipping. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about a key ad maybe in your fantasy basketball league as it comes down the stretch, and a couple of things to get to talk about with rookies in the baseball season going on right now. Hey, it's Tito, host of the Premier Fantasy Podcast. Get all the news and analysis you need to dominate your fantasy league. I've been doing this as long as anybody in the business. I can help give you the edge in your leagues. It's the Premier Fantasy Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. All right, we're back, and I'll talk some fantasy basketball now, and someone you should be looking to add in your leagues, and a little bit of strategy involved in this as well as you come down the stretch, as you get ready for your fantasy basketball playoffs. And what you want to look at are teams that are absolutely out of it. Done, finished, don't have a chance this season in the playoffs. They're clearly playing for the future. And what they're going to do is they're going to start sitting their veterans and playing more of the younger players. And so you want to look for those opportunities to take advantage. You get a guy who gets a lot of minutes. It doesn't always equate to more production. Usually it does, though. And one of the guys I like, I've liked him for a while now, is TATE in Houston, the former Ohio State Buckeye, who played overseas for a few years and is now getting his first significant NBA work. And the Rockets are clearly one of those teams that are out of it. And they've dumped as many pieces as they could. So the Rockets, so if you look at TATE, his minutes have increased dramatically. In his last 7 games, he's played anywhere from 22 to 36 minutes, and most times been over 30 minutes. He's had some pretty decent nights. Scoring-wise, he had a 24-point game. But he fills up the stat sheet. He gets points, rebounds, assists, even some steals in there. So that's what I like about TATE is that even if he's not scoring, he can still get other points for you in other categories like rebounds and assists because he's a good ball handler. He gets good rebounds for how big he is. He's not that big of a guy. He's only 6'4", he weighs about 225, 230, but he gets good rebounds for a guy that size. So Tate's somebody I would look to add. But if he's already gone, just start looking at other teams, though, that have fallen way back in the standings and that are sitting their veterans now. You know, Oklahoma City's not going to play Al Horford anymore this year. They've told him that don't worry about it. You know, we're going to sit you down because they're going to try to work out a trade for him in the offseason. So that's those kinds of situations where you look at and you see a veteran who's not playing and look at the next guy in the depth chart and start targeting those kinds of players. And as teams start falling off even more in the standings, you want to grab those rookies or second-year guys you think that are getting their first real look at significant minutes, 20, 25, 30 minutes in a game. And those are the ones you can grab and get great value on right now off of the waiver wire. As far as baseball rookies go, second baseman Jonathan India for the Reds. I've got a chance to watch him play a couple of times, and the kid's hitting 476 so far. He's got an OPS of 1.099, no homers yet, 10 RBIs, great in the field. Not that the field will matter much in fantasy, but India, though, is a guy who looks like someone who could stick this year, can certainly hit Major League pitching. He's a guy they were so excited about bringing him up. They moved Moustakas over from second to third, which is a better position for him, and put Eugenio Suarez at shortstop, which is not a great position for Suarez. He's not the most polished shortstop, although he did play coming up through the ranks a little bit. It's still third base was a better position for him, but they so desperately wanted to get Indy into the lineup and get him a lot of at-bats. The Reds are willing to move Suarez to shortstop, and we don't know if that'll work or not, but regardless, India's got to be in the lineup, and that's why I think that somebody you should, if you haven't picked him up already, I would grab him in your baseball league. Okay, that's a wrap on this podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast fix. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter @FitHappens. That's THIT @FitHappens. Give me a follow there. If you have any specific questions, that's probably the best way to reach out to me. I'll follow you back. And again, thank you to MANSCAPED, who supports this show, the Premier Fantasy Podcast, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. MANSCAPED offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. They obsess over their technology developments to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. Stick around, the Phenomenal CBD podcast coming up next. And thanks for tuning in again to the Premier Fantasy Podcast.